this is just showing all the different types of things that happen within the offense. We did like a whole like 30-minute thing on just the different actions you can do on the 2-man side and the 3-man sides. So this is, I mean, just a couple of clips of just a base part of what it looks like, where you're going to have an empty-sided 2-man game. This team's coming down here in just a kind of more of a transition look, but you can see how they get into it. You got 3 away, deep corner, 45, and then you've got your opposite big in the slot, and they're going to play to this empty side first. Nothing there. They quickly reverse it. You see they get this 45 with this burn cut through. They play to that next side, and now the whole thing kind of repeats again, where this big comes back. He's coming back right to the middle. Sometimes we, want them to come closer to the slot, and you can just play that action again on the backside, and then of course just kind of play out of it to whatever it gives you. So just seeing it again, pick and roll entry. Let's see if we get to another one. Coming out, flown into it, don't have anything. There's a 45, and the whole thing just repeats on that backside. And the one thing I've always loved about it personally is, and Tony, I don't know about you, but sometimes the harder things to guard are those empty corner pick and rolls where the tag, on the other side's really got to come over. If you got a big that pick and pops really well, not having someone in that strong side corner sometimes presents challenges. And so this offense is just continually putting teams in empty pick and rolls. And if the ball is moved fluidly and the ball is moved side to side pretty quickly, what it does do is it can make it really difficult to get into like ice or drop coverage for the big, because they have to go such a long distance to cover from side to side. And so there's just a lot of really nice options out of it. So you can imagine here, like for a big, even if it's a handoff, to get all the way from here into like maybe an ice or drop position. And they do it, teams do a good job. That's where, if we're able to get it to a third side or whatever and really make the bigs work, you're playing against switches, or you're playing against, situations where maybe they're more advantageous. So this is just a couple of clips of just the sort of base offense and how you can play to a DHO, how you can play to a on ball. And then I'll pause it here for questions, because basically the rest of the 30 minutes are just variations that you can run out of it.
I'll echo exactly what you said. We tried to initiate this a little bit more in our half court, because there is no tag on the backside. You basically have the entire half court to do whatever you want to. I know most teams will roll the big in that 2-man action to the front of the rim. We had the luxury this year. We had a 7-footer who was one of our top 3 shooters on our team. And so
Love
just
that.
spacing him all the way out to the wing, all the way to the corner, and there's nobody there. But I also think on the other side of the floor too, you have those trips on the other side, and I would assume that the coach is yelling for the low man to come over and help, and then it's giving up exactly what everybody yells not to give up, which is the corner 3 over in the far corner of the court. So the combination of those two things, I feel like, makes it extremely dangerous, especially if you have a guy that can pop out to the corner after setting the ball screen.
You're so right, and that's something that we didn't necessarily have. We had one that got injured this year, but a pick and pop 5 or 4.
I'm sure that completely transforms the offense if you have the ability to do that.
And that's the fun part about this. And I think this is, coaches watching kind of see the motion and go, okay, get the motion and how to install it. But then the fun part is, of course, well, who are your guys or girls and what can they do? And do you have a 4 or 5 that can pick and pop? And there's so many actions you can do. If you have more of a roller, then working on being a great roller, slip, handoff person, and we certainly had both this year and have had both in the last 6 or 7 years. And so as the season progresses, our guys know who's maybe a popper, who's maybe a roller. Of course, we want to mix it up based off of coverages. And then you're teaching, okay, what are they doing? How do you attack this type of coverage and play out of it? And that's the fun part, just with the 4s and 5s.
Yeah. Do you do anything other than burn, or primarily, are you just burning the middle of those trips over on the far side?
Yeah, and so that's the fun part is, no, we're not just 45. And that's where I'd say the first part of the season is we are teaching just that 45, just to really get that cut down, to work on opening space. But then as the season progresses, we add in about 1, 2, yeah, 4, maybe 4 or 5 other things
Mhm.
that guard can do, which are they can come for a handoff. So when we hit that big and reverse instead of 45 and like you're seeing right there, they can come right for a handoff, and we're playing, um, our kinda shake action where we can roll and then rise up from the corner on that backside, or he can re-screen and play pick and pop, all these
Mhm.
fun little things you can do off of a hand excuse me, off of a handoff. We can fake that handoff and play right back to the two-man side, so instead of giving that handoff to the 45, we'll pull it over the top, play right back to the empty corner, and it's another way to get an empty corner look, but instead of a 45, you play through a handoff, which is sometimes effective with teams that are point switching this. They get used to just, trying to switch out on the 45 and take that away, and all of a sudden you send them off for a handoff, and you can catch that low man maybe, flat-footed and attack that baseline, so the fake handoff's a nice thing,
Mhm.
or we can go right into zoom or splits. So, you can imagine all the millions of little possibilities in the
Mhm.
zooms or splits there that we like. And so these are things that as our players get better at this, they can just do it themselves.
Mhm.
Or from the bench, we can dictate based off of a coverage we think that defense is playing. Hey, we're going to play more to splits, we're going to play more to handoffs or more 45s and try to mix it up in the flow of the game. And that can be triggered by just a single word from the bench. And our guys later in the season are better at that.
I know this can be based off personnel, but as I watched those clips yesterday, I noticed some actions that were more prominent than others or more reoccurring than others.
Sure.
Is there anything like that that comes to mind that you feel it could have been just this last year? And like I said, based off of personnel, but it
Yeah.
could also be now that I've run this 6 years, um, these things right now, because of the way defenses are guarding, have proven to be really effective against man to man defenses.
Yeah, so depending on the game you were watching, for sure there's game to game different calls, sets or ideas or personnel based ways to attack a defense. And so sometimes we will have where we're gonna 45 more, or we're gonna zoom more, or we're going to come for handoffs more. We had a couple of just great guards this year, and so in that 45 spot, if there was a certain guard there and we wanted to play to a handoff to them and then we would want our 4s and 5s. We call them quarterbacks in our
Mhm,
offense. So, this is the Euro flow part of our offense, and then we have, like, the 5 out, and those
mhm.
4s and 5s are quarterbacks because we say they gotta make a lot of decisions like a quarterback. Um, and so to your point, depending on the game, it might have been a call and it might have been specifically to attack something we thought we could attack personnel-wise.
One that I saw that I really like that we've used is when you go on that empty side and you go with the ball screen, when the ball handler rejects the screen and then drives baseline, and you have your big, which a lot of people will just pop them or space them or maybe roll them even. They would turn and set, I don't know what you call it, but we call it
Yeah.
like that crackback screen for the guard that comes behind it, and now you have a shooter and the defender, the big defender has to decide, "Do I wanna go out and guard that?" And if so, then you have the slip to the rim. If
Yep.
not, then it usually is just an effective screen. But I saw that one a
Yeah.
couple of times, I like that one.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's both a set and a read.
Okay.
It's definitely a set we have trying to get a baseline rip where then that uh, people imagining listening to this, we will then turn and like you said, crack back for a shooter. It's a great action just to put a lot of pressure on the defense on a baseline drive and then the shooter coming back. And then, if that big flies out to help on that shooter, we'll work on slipping into that little open pocket at the
Mhm,
end there with the big and yeah, it's a nice action to guard. We put that in years ago because someone else ran it against us. Like all good things, you steal them. Someone
mhm.
ran that against us, and it was just we had a hard time guarding it. So we said, let's add this into our flow.
Something else that I saw that I like that I'm seeing more do, and I'm sad that I waited to the very end, but we waited till, like, 2 games left in the regular season before we added this, was actually a guard to guard screen, and
Hmm.
then you guys used the guard to guard screen or even you almost ghosted it, and
Yeah.
then you had a flare that went with it, and everything happening historically, a lot of our screens are, like, coming up from the baseline rather than, like, making people guard going out towards half court. I don't know if that makes sense, but,
Yep.
that one seemed to be one that I saw a couple times as well.
Yeah, especially later in the year, that was our ghost flare action where we'd have a guard to guard screen coming up from the slot into the middle third, and we would ghost out of that. And this is another thing we've stolen from Europeans. Teams do this all the time to great effect. And then after they ghost it, they just fly off of a flare screen. And when you've got a really great ball handler or playmaking guard with the ball, the ghost screen messes teams up all the time. Just even when teams know it coming, it's just awkward, to guard if you're not ready for it. And so, one, if there's an ability to penetrate off that, it's there. We'll take it. If not, going off that flare screen creates a lot of nice actions to flow into our kind of five outlook where you can hit the guy off the flare, or you can hit the big to get into zoom action. I mean, there's a ton of things, and so that's where these offenses start to meld together a little bit as you can add a little wrinkle like that. And we certainly had a couple ball handlers this year that we like to put in that action just because they could get to the rim if there was a mistake on the ghost action, or then you can kind of get into our flow off that flare screen.
Can you go ahead and show some of that ghost flare stuff?
Yeah. So here's a couple examples from some teams that do it really well in Europe. This isn't our stuff, obviously, but just what we were talking about is there's going to be a ghost screen coming up from the middle third, and then they're going to fly off of this flare screen. And it's just great action. Sorry, skip through this, especially like late clock, late game, a way to get a guard to attack downhill. So here's a good look. Just ghost out of it. And if that on ball defender, all you're looking for is what he's about to do here is just open their stance, even the slightest, and a good ball handler to their dominant hand has all this space to go. And then, of course, as we're looking at this too, and what kind of the rest of this video goes through, this guy's left-handed, but there's a ton of space to attack into. And then, the read here is if there's any help at the rim, most of the time teams are not helping off of this strong side corner. Most of the time the help is coming from the backside. And so a player going to their dominant hand, obviously they can finish, but then even the one-handed pass off the dribble, a skip to the opposite corner has been effective for us with certain guys over the years as well. And so this video kind of goes through all these reads, but just keep showing, and then there's the big able to drop down. So a ton of really good stuff out of it. And then, depending on where you go with it, kind of playing into our flow concepts.
Cool.
Guess I can show one more for you here. Go on the left. So that's just a little bit about what that action looks like.
That's cool. I like that action. This has nothing to do with Euro, but this year we did something like that out of horns. I think I've seen everybody doing like horns with a flare. So
Yep.
get your shooter to set and then what we actually did was we would run that and it would set up then we call flare Ricky. So we'd bring that guy
Yep.
right back and then he'd have a shot or you'd have a slip to the rim or something like that. So just another example
Really
of
good
like
action.
stringing together stuff based off of wherever your players are standing and you can do it whether you're running 5 out or Euro flow or just
And
running a
that's the
horns
fun
play.
part, right? I think, like you mentioned later in the year, having a shooter that can do that. And that's a great action too, that horn stuff you guys ran and similar effect, right? Instead of, this guy starting from the bottom and
Mhm.
sprinting through, and just being able to layer those things in as the season progresses and how teams guard you.